This is the story of Edward coming to America in 1907 from Italy. My first impressions of the New World will always remain etched in my memory, particularly that hazy October morning when I first saw Ellis Island. The steamer Florida, 14 days out of Naples, filled to capacity with 1,600 natives of Italy, had weathered one of the worst storms in our captain's memory, and glad we were, both children and grown-ups, to leave the open sea and come at last through the Narrows into the bay. My mother, my stepfather, my brother Giuseppe, and my two sisters, Liberta and Helvetia, all of us together, happy that we had come through the storm safely, clustered on the foredeck for fear of separation, and looked with wonder on this miraculous land of our dreams. Giuseppe and I held tightly to stepfather's hands, while Liberta and Helvetia clung to mother. Passengers all about us were crowding against the rail. Jabbered conversations, sharp cries, laughs, and cheers. A steady rising din filled the air. Mothers and fathers lifted up babies so that they could see, off to the left, the Statue of Liberty. Finally, the Florida veered to the left, turning northward onto the Hudson River, and now the incredible buildings of Lower Manhattan came very close to us. The officers of the ship went striding up and down the decks, shouting orders and directions to driving the immigrants before them. Scowling and gesturing, they pushed and pulled the passengers, herding us into separate groups as though we were animals. A few moments later, we came to our dock, and the long journey was over. But the journey was not yet over. Before they could be admitted to the United States, immigrants had to pass through Ellis Island, which became the nation's chief immigrant processing center in 1892. There they would be questioned and examined. Those who could not pass all the exams would be detained. Some would be sent back to Europe, and so their arrival in America was filled with great anxiety. Among the immigrants, Ellis Island was known as Heartbreak Island. When their ship docked at the Hudson River Pier, the immigrants had numbered identity tags pinned to their clothing. They were herded into special ferry boats that carried them to Ellis Island. Officials hurried them along, shouting, "Quick, run, hurry," in half a dozen languages. Filing into an enormous inspection hall, the immigrants formed long lines, separated by iron railings that made the hall look like a great maze. Now the examinations began. First, the immigrants were examined by two doctors of the United States Health Service. One doctor looked for physical and mental abnormalities. When a case aroused suspicion, the immigrant received a chalk mark on the right shoulder for further inspection. L for lameness, H for heart, X for mental defects, and so on. The second doctor watched for contagious and infectious diseases. He looked especially for infections of the scalp and at the eyelids for symptoms of trachoma, a blinding disease. Since trachoma had caused more than half of all medical detentions, this doctor was greatly feared. He stood directly in the immigrant's path. With a swift movement, he would grab the immigrant's eyelid, pull it up, and peer beneath it. If all was well, the immigrant passed on. Those who failed to get past both doctors had to undergo a more thorough medical examination. Others moved on to the registration clerk, who questioned them with the aid of an interpreter. What's your name? Your nationality? Your occupation? Can you read and write? Have you ever been in prison? How much money do you have with you? Where are you going? Some immigrants were so flustered they could not answer. They were allowed to sit and rest and try again. About one immigrant out of every 5 or 6 was detained for additional examinations or questioning.